Today I wanted to talk about the importance of free speech in the development of our society from an anthropological context, because I believe that without exaggeration, freedom of speech, the ability to say exactly what you think without reprisal, is one of the most important factors that have contributed to our evolution as a species. And the reason for it is that if you look at survival in its most basic of forms, it is incredibly simple, yet infinitely complex. You only need three basic elements to survive: water, food, and shelter. But how you go about obtaining those few things is incredibly complicated. And back in the kind of pre-technological age, when we were still living in small hunter-gatherer tribes, being an elder meant something. Surviving meant something. It meant that you had wisdom, you had knowledge. And as I say, back then, survival, it was, I'm not going to say it was simpler than today. I mean, maybe it was in some ways. Survival today is very easy, but it's not simple. Survival back then was simpler, but more difficult, if that makes sense. You know, you couldn't just go down to a supermarket and buy all the food that you needed. But at the same time, you didn't have to worry about taxes or car insurance or, you know, any number of other things that kind of take up our mental power every day in the modern age. So anyway, being an elder meant something. It meant that you knew the key to survival. And that's why people respected their elders, because they had this knowledge, you know, just through virtue of being alive. It meant that they were doing something right. And that's something that we've lost in today's day and age, because as I say, survival has become much easier. Now it doesn't take any kind of specialized knowledge to survive or reproduce. It's just kind of a given that that's what you can do. And tying this back to free speech, the beauty of humans is our language, our ability to convey complex ideas to one another and to be understood and to pass down skills and lessons to our friends and the next generations. And in a tribal society where you had this kind of common wisdom of how to survive, then it likely meant that there was quite a rigid way of doing things. As I say, it was simpler to survive back then. And that's why we as human beings have such a kind of evolutionary pressure to conform to the group, because it's the group's collective knowledge that enables it to survive and procreate, which is, you know, one of the most powerful drivers of any species. And so we respected the group and we respected the way that things were done. But occasionally, one person would have an idea of how things could be done differently. And it's through the power of human language that they were not only able to convey that idea to the rest of the group, but also convince everybody else that it was worth trying. Convince people that it was worth changing something about this process that was obviously working, because there was a better way to do it. And that's something that almost no other species can do. And it's why we were able to develop to such a degree, because we would constantly have different members of the groups coming up with new ideas and then being able to convey them convincingly enough that people would be willing to give them a go. And when you don't allow people in a society to do this, when you don't allow new ideas to be shared without any kind of fear of repercussions or judgment or reprisal, then that's when you start to stagnate as a society. And I think that's what we're seeing now, especially over the last 20 years or so, as this kind of cancel culture has become more mainstream. We saw a lot of people kind of self-censoring their ideas. And in a way, I'm guilty of it too. You know, I put a video out a couple of days ago where I spoke my mind and I got into some quite controversial ideas, and there's nothing that I said in that video that I don't still 100% agree with. And yet I took it down because one of my friends is in some legal hot water at the moment, should we say, and it could have had repercussions on him for him to be associated with me making a video like that. And it wasn't an easy decision to make when he asked me to take it down, because on the one hand, you know, he's my best friend, I love the guy to bits, but it just felt like deeply wrong in my heart that I was having to essentially censor what I actually believed. And it was a decision that I really struggled to make, honestly. I felt like some kind of right was being taken away from me. And in a way, it was. Like, I do believe that we as human beings have a fundamental right to share our ideas. And when we're pressured not to do so, you know, it doesn't make those ideas go away. We don't stop thinking them. We don't stop talking about them. We just talk about them with people that we know won't judge us. And that's what leads to the formation of echo chambers. It's what leads to, or I think has led to, such kind of extremism politically on both sides, especially online. Because if you have an idea that isn't mainstream and that you get judged or shamed or, you know, possibly even legal consequences for, like what's going on in the UK at the moment, people being arrested over things that they tweet about, then it just leads you to forming these echo chambers online where you can actually speak your mind, but then there's nobody else in there who disagrees with you in order to challenge those viewpoints. Because again, going back to kind of tribal society days, if somebody had an idea about a way to do things that was different and it was shit, then you'd get told that. You know, there wouldn't be any kind of pussyfooting around the fact. It either helped you survive more efficiently or it didn't. And you know, bad ideas would very quickly be shot down. But that's not happening in today's day and age. Today, if you believe in something completely off the wall, like, I don't know, flat earth or something like that, then rather than, you know, kind of rightly being, I guess, ridiculed to some extent by your peers and being educated on why you're wrong, you can instead just go online and find a group of other people who agree with you. And all it does is seat you even deeper in that belief. You feel like you've stumbled onto some hidden secret, some hidden truth. And this kind of ties back into another video that I made a couple of weeks back about the rise of AI cults, which I think are going to come in the future as well. Is that it's people's wish to believe that they have some kind of higher knowledge that other people don't. You know, that wish to feel special in some way. And that's something that ChatGPT and these other AI models are very good at in a quite sly way. You know, they're very sycophantic, they're very complimentary in the way that they talk to you, they make you feel special, they make you feel clever, they're constantly complimenting you and you know, flattering you. It's quite sickening really when you notice it. But it's led to a lot of very smart people being kind of hooked in by these ideas that you know, they've somehow awoken ChatGPT, or that because of the way that they've spoken to their specific model of ChatGPT, they've kind of unlocked it to this higher phase of consciousness and whatnot. And it's the same kind of concept that applies here with people that put themselves into these echo chambers and start to feel like they're in on some hidden truth. Now, the only thing, and I mean this, the only consequence of consistently stifling one group's freedom of speech is to push them underground. And when that happens, they will form an echo chamber. And when that happens, the rhetoric will get increasingly more out of control. You know, these like-minded people who, you know, are being suppressed from talking about their ideas. You see this particularly in the rise of the far right, as the media likes to call them. There's lots of protests going on in the UK at the moment, started by an immigrant that came over from, I can't remember where, but then within the space of like 1 week of being in the country, he had sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. And there's a lot of protests going on over that in the UK currently. And Keir Starmer, our fearless leader, is labelling them all as far-right extremists, when they're not. Most of them are just ordinary concerned citizens who see what's happening in the country and aren't a fan of it. And I can't say that I blame them for that. But the more that the media tries to alienate these people and demonise them for having these opinions, then the more it's going to push them underground, and the more extreme that rhetoric is going to get, because they are actually being censored. So when you are actually being censored over your ideas, it's quite easy to start having some kind of conspiracy against you, that you're being suppressed in some way, and it just leads to more and more extremism. And if this isn't corrected, then the only outcome is violence. Because if you feel like your ideas are not being heard, and that you are actively being suppressed and told to shut up, then it's a fundamental human right that is being taken away from you. And people feel that intrinsically, I think, and it makes people angry. There's few things that can make a person angrier than being told to shut up, and that your opinion doesn't matter, and that you're actually evil for having it. And I remember writing about this about 18 months ago, when it looked like the culture was just kind of starting to shift, and the right was kind of gaining in popularity a bit, or kind of more, it was more culturally acceptable to be, slightly right-wing in terms of your views on immigration and things like that. And I said that the pendulum needed to start swinging back the other way, but I really hope that it doesn't swing back too far. And that's what I fear might be happening at the moment. Because as much as you can dislike the current left-wing kind of mainstream political narrative that's going on, the answer is not far-right populism. We really need to kind of get out of that left and right style of thinking, because you can't turn back the clock. The only way that you can even try and turn back the clock to Britain in the 1950s, or America in the 1950s, which a lot of people seem to kind of idolize as the glory days, when you could buy a house and raise a family on one man's salary, and you had racial and ethnic homogeneity within the community, and people felt a common bond. They felt that the country was on the march towards a better future. Nobody believes that anymore. I don't know a single person that's proud to be British anymore. It means nothing. And I think the whole concept of countries and borders is kind of stupid in the long run, but anyway, that's a completely different topic. My point is that you can't turn back the clock to the past without serious authoritarianism, and that's not a path I want to go down either. So we really do just have to work with what we've got and accept that this is the hand that we've been dealt. And as soon as money replaced God in the global zeitgeist as our highest organizing life symbol, then globalization became inevitable, because the people that own these corporations, all they care about is profit, getting the cheapest labor possible. They don't care how much they fuck up the demographics of a country to do that, because they're rich enough that they can just escape to wherever they want. They've got houses all over the world. And it makes no difference to them at all. But the mature response to this is not to then elect some far-right populist who says he's going to deport them all and, really crack down and law and order. Like, do you want that? Do you really want that? More law and order, more crackdowns, more authoritarianism? That's not the path to go down. I think the only way out of this is for people to be able to have an open dialogue, because these are not easy problems to deal with. I don't claim to have all of the answers here, but I do believe in a kind of collective wisdom that can come through everybody sharing their opinion. But if people are afraid to do that, it doesn't work. So I guess what I would urge you to do is share your truth. Speak your mind as much as you feel comfortable to do so. And, maybe put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit as well. Honestly, I think that the culture is swinging back to the point where people are realizing the importance of free speech. And I think that this whole cancel culture thing that we're seeing is slowly fading away. Now, I understand that that's easier for me to say because obviously I'm self-employed, I don't have to answer to anybody. But I think it's important that every person starts to kind of almost build up a log of their thoughts and philosophy online, because it's almost like an optional I don't want to say social credit system because that makes it sound really dystopian, but in the future, as we kind of split into smaller and smaller groups, which I think is happening as people connect with each other online and find their people. And again, you've got to be careful here because that can lead to echo chambers, but it's happening regardless. And I think that the content that you put out there, if you can build up a kind of consistent history of yourself, saying what you truly believe and acting in a way that's consistent with that, it's the fastest way that you can build trust with anybody. And the people who have kind of put the time and the energy into building up this this online presence are the people that are going to find it very easy to gain access to these different, more exclusive groups as they pop up around the world, because it's literally it's your online trust. People can watch a few of your videos, they can get a sense of who you are, and I also think that just in general, contributing towards the kind of collective unconscious, I suppose, and broadcasting what you truly believe into the world will be wiser as a species than if that didn't happen, is basically my philosophy there. So yeah, that's it for today. Speak your truth, don't be afraid of anybody, and hopefully we can avert some kind of crisis, because fuck me, the world is on the brink at the moment. That's what it feels like anyway, and I know other people sense it too. But I'm not here to be some kind of doomer. I do believe that the future is bright, but we have to step up and kind of work for it. And that means saying no to censorship and speaking our minds anyway, regardless of any potential consequences that your fear-based mind is conjuring up. Anyway, peace. Have a good day, guys. Catch you later.